Everyone, I want to welcome you to this creative conversation. I cannot stress enough what a treat you are in for today, because we are talking, no pressure, Pete. We're talking to Peter. We're talking to Peter Baker. He is the former head of creative at Duo, which was acquired by Cisco. For those of you who are in Metro Detroit, you know that Duo was one of kind of our Ann Arbor unicorns or darlings. Pete has a really kind of amazing career that you've built for yourself. And what I wanted to talk about today is how you, a little bit about your career, how you found yourself getting these amazing opportunities, because you started out as a freelancer, Pete, right? And then you ended up going back into the corporate world, but you've consistently found yourself kind of, I would describe you as like always in the right place at the right time kind of guy. And I just want to start by like, let's talk about it. Let's talk about how people can create more opportunity for themselves, because you seem to have done a really good job of that. So welcome, first of all, Pete. Welcome to this conversation.
That was very sweet. I appreciate that. Although I will say I was definitely in the wrong place at the wrong time for my first job out of university.
Okay.
So I went to University of Michigan, graduated back in 2000. And right around when the web was starting to be, you know, a career for people. So I got a job at Borders Corporate right out of the gate working.
I loved Borders.
It was so great. I spent like every day there. It was my exposure to all the coolest design magazines that they imported from London. The computer books were thick and heavy.
Wow.
And we got a ton of free books working at the corporate office. But about a year in, so I was working on borders.com, and we were working on a new borders.com that was going to be their big e-commerce push. And about a month before it launched, a couple of months before it launched, we got an all hands meeting where we were told that Amazon was taking over all Borders online fulfillment activities. So
really?
Then within a couple of years, Borders was out of business. So
okay, wait, what year was this?
It's not all hits for me, Laura. It's not all.
There's a lot of hits though. But what year was that? Was that early 2000s?
2001, 2002, 2002.
So they handed their online fulfillment over to Amazon.
Amazon to do it. Yeah, it was kind of a bizarre move. So
okay, so that was a flop.
That was a flop. That was my first flop. That really, you know, took the piss out of my, you know, ascendancy. And then so after that, I moved to Chicago, sort of on a lark, without a job. But I had lined up a bunch of interviews, and you know, so I was feeling good about it. I was like, whatever, I'm like 23, I can, I'll find a job, whatever. So I moved to Chicago on November 5th, 2001.
Okay.
And then 9/11 happens a week later. And
September 5th.
September, yeah, sorry.
Okay.
September. I was thinking 9, yeah. September 5th, 2001, 6 days later, September 11th happens. Chicago shuts down because everyone assumed Chicago is next. All my interviews, like the whole, you know, kind of economy came to a halt real quick. All my interviews are canceled. I spent the next like 6-7 months just scraping together random odd jobs. But that's when I really thought freelancing might actually be viable, because I had no choice but pull it together on my own after that. So,
and that's how you started your freelancing career.
That was sort of the start of it. I did get a job. I had a series of real shit jobs. One, I was doing a website for this foam interlocking flooring guy, and I was working out of his basement, which was really weird.
Were you making foam?
No.
What was your job?
He was sort of like a foam importer exporter, and he was kind of a piece of work. He only let me, and you know, any designers on the call familiar with the typeface Impact, that was the only typeface he wanted to use, head to toe, like body copy, display, anything. So I lasted about 3 weeks there. Went to Blue Cross Blue Shield for about 6 weeks. Designing there is more like filing stuff in triplicate, because they have to store everything for 11 years, no matter what it is. An invitation to a Christmas party, they have to store it for 11 years. So anyways, just I just wanted to kind of level set. It's not all been, wins across the board.
I appreciate you saying that, because, a lot of people will also look at my career and say, wow, you've done really well for yourself.
Well, we
And I'll
get
say,
to point out the win. We only put the stuff in our portfolio that we
we
talk about.
Exactly. We talk about the wins. We talk about the good stuff. But man, I will tell you, early on in my career, I was living in Montreal, and I had, for the most part, nothing but garbage jobs after I graduated. And folks, I graduated from McGill. That's like the Harvard of Canada. I'm no dummy, but boy, I could not, it was right around, when did I graduate? It was just after September 11th. Mm-hmm. The .com had burst.
Yep.
It was so hard to find work. I remember one of my first jobs was, I was a personal assistant to an opera singer.
Wait, one of my other shit jobs was telesales for an opera in Chicago. I lasted one day there.
One day, yeah. I was not cut out to be a person. I was not very good.
Oh, I can't imagine. and opera singers, they're level head, not dramatic at all, I'm sure.
Not at all. No, very, very super even keeled people. Yeah, so I had my share of stuff. And then of course, when I worked in Silicon Valley, any company I touched, there are some exceptions, but almost every company I touched was like trying to get acquired as quickly as possible because we were on a sinking ship. It was really, really hard. Just to be clear, not every company going through an acquisition is a sinking ship, but some companies are. Some companies realize they don't have enough runway to continue operating. No. And so they're trying to get acquired. And that's where I found myself many times. It was not great, but you turn things around. I turn things around. And tell us, so you're going through, I know you and I lived in the Bay Area at the same time. You came back to be closer to family. Same for me. So you come back, you're freelancing. How do I can't help but say, how do you trip into these opportunities?
I mean, so one of the jobs I had in Chicago, the one that I kind of finally landed in and stuck with for a while was at a startup. It was called Catalyst. It was a commercial real estate listing, like Zillow, but for commercial real estate. And it was literally like 3 or 4 of us. And it was a friend of a friend's company. And they're kind of like in the early days, we need a logo. We need some design. We need to talk about this stuff. It's like a couple engineers, the commercial real estate guy, and then, hey, does anyone have any designer friends, basically? And one of them said, I know this guy, a guy I went to high school with that was doing some engineering work for them. So I joined that one. And this was when I was at Blue Cross and I was desperate to get out of there. And
you're triple filing everything you do.
I was on the sinking ship looking for my own acquisition at that point. I will go to this company that's literally working out of the closet of a commercial real estate firm. But what was great about it, those early, I mean, it was literally 4 of us in there. There was no roles defined. Like we all had to kind of do everything. It was like, Pete, you're the one with Photoshop on your computer. You're the designer. You're literally going to be doing everything that needs to happen here. And so I think, that early lack of definition kind of led me into, I was doing product marketing, I was doing brand design, I was doing our front end website. All of us were terrible at JavaScript. So it's like, whoever wants to learn it right now and to do it. So I was like, I'll try that out. So it's just all those kind of like raise your hand opportunities. We're just like, I feel like trying it and I'll take that on. When you're in a small group, small startup like that, gets you a lot of sort of traction in other areas of things. Like I've never been super specialized. And I think that role, that job kind of kicked off that lack of that sort of, I talked about the T-shaped people. I'm like nothing but the top of the T. I'm not the best at any one of those things, but I've dabbled in all of it. And then at a certain point, after a bunch of freelancing and stuff, and I was doing contracting, like my pitch had basically become to any other startups or small companies, like, I'm going to help you look legit. I'm going to help you and look legit both from a design point of view, but also from like a messaging and sort of brand ethos, and like trying to translate and connect the dots for all the soup of stuff that early company founders are kind of dealing with. It's like connecting those dots, finding that through line, being like, all right, this is what you need to focus on talking about. This is your story. And there's a bunch of elements of that story: the visual design, the website, the message, the product design, the architecture, the naming of things, all of that stuff is like a piece of that story. And so once you're in that sort of part of it, it's still very, creatively focused, and design might be the big thing, or marketing might be the big thing, but then you're kind of in the middle of everything. And so when I walked in to talk to companies, it's kind of like, what do you actually need right now? And they would say one thing, and then I'd be like, what I'm hearing is you actually need to figure out why you exist. And then we can talk about the rest of the stuff. And that kind of gets you in a more interesting, for me at least, a more interesting space than contracting as I'm going to deliver you some slides or something.
I like that. Well, there's a few things that are really cool that I want to pick up on. One, a lot of us have started our careers as generalists. I certainly did. I did PR, I did websites, I did social media, I did like UX. Like, I was kind of all over the place, picking up skills. And to your point, what ends up happening to people like that is they can see the problem from so many angles that if you are just stuck in one lane, you never really get that 360. So I love that that kind of became your, actually, like, what made you really unique. And I also love something, you haven't said it directly, but alluding to the fact that, like, people weren't hiring you, and this is really important for the audience to remember. People weren't hiring you to say, Pete, I need you to write a 500-word blog post. Pete, I need you to do a logo, just get it done. People were hiring you because you could be a trusted advisor to them, which is an infinitely more valuable role than the person who can just do that one skill.
Right. And more often than not, those people you're talking to, especially in early stages company, they don't know what they need yet. They need somebody to help them figure out what they need. They've got what they need. Their list is full, right? Their plates are spinning. They're over here. And then it's like, help us. And if you can pick out the things that, if you've got enough sort of awareness of the sort of 360 degree, that bit of the corporate world coming out of me there, 360 degree view of the company, and understand from a business point of view just enough, from a finance point of view just enough, but then you've got your your real passions like design and story and stuff. You bring all that stuff together, and it's like, here's my assessment basically of what it is what I can do for you and what you need. Does that sound good? And more often than not, they're like, thank fuck you told us that.
So you get in
for swearing so much on your
That's okay. That's okay.
We're kind of kismet there though. So
yeah, totally. So how do you get this opportunity then with Duo? Because Duo was just like a little baby company at that point, correct?
Yeah, Duo was. I knew Doug prior, Doug Song, CEO and co-founder. He had started a co-working space in Ann Arbor called the Tech Brewery. It was in an old brewery in town. You can rent desks, and there were a lot of little startups there. And they would hold beer 30s on Fridays, little meetups to just come and hang out.
Cool.
And when I moved to town, I was like, I still had some friends here, but I was also looking for the next wave of people that I might know and who was doing what here. And certainly there was some like, hey, I'm freelance and I should kind of get dialed in here. But I was mostly working for companies on the West Coast still, and I was cool with that.
Gotcha.
Because I was a few hours ahead of them. I'd be done by the end, But so I go to some of these things, and Doug is the networker of all networkers, not in a schlocky LinkedIn kind of way, but like in a, hey, what do you do? I know like 5 other people you should talk to about that. rarely like putting himself in the middle, but just like, hey, you seem cool. These people are cool. You got to meet them. You got to meet them. Like he's the most referential people person I know. Or
Wow.
something up and he's just like, oh, you should meet this guy, this woman, and these people. And everyone he suggested I meet either became a client or a friend or just a really solid connection in this town.
Amazing.
And so, you know, that was certainly some luck of the draw, just like showing up at the right time and being in town, but also just being kind of eager to know people and know what's going on. And one of the things I always say that I loved about coming back to Michigan and Ann Arbor, especially when I lived in the West Coast and to a lesser extent in Chicago, there was a lot of cool stuff going on, but there wasn't a lot of desire to kind of collaborate on it and share it with people. Like share it by like, hey, come to my gallery show or something, or come to my, salon where I'm going to talk about this thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it was rarely like, hey, you do a cool thing. Should we do something together? And when I came to Ann Arbor, it was just like everything from MakerWorks to anything going on in Detroit. Everybody was just like eager to have you involved. Like, you do something cool. You like what I'm doing. Let's do it together. Cool.
That is such a unique aspect to, I'm going to say Metro Detroit. I don't know about the Midwest. I'm going to assume probably the Midwest, but like it is really a beautiful thing about working here is it's not just me, it's us.
Yeah.
How can we do this together? So that's what kicked you off.
So Doug, when they were starting, so Doug and John, when they decided, Doug was working at another startup before that, one of his own, then he was at Barracuda. And then, so it was a couple years that he and John Oberheide started talking about doing a security company. And they came to me and they're like, we need some help. It was literally like a one-line email. Hey, I think I'm going to start a company. Can you help me out with it? And it was again, that same, like, I can help you look legit. So did a bunch of early, pitch decks and kind of mocked up the mobile app and stuff, did, helped them name the company and all that stuff early on as a like consultant and contractor. And then I joined full-time year and a half later. So he called me, he's like, if you're not coming on full-time, you got to find me somebody. And I was like, all right, let's talk about it. I'll give you 2 years. And that was like almost 10 years ago.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. So it's kind of like when I hear you, we all have sort of an idea or sort of hopes or dreams for how we want our career to move forward. And I presume you were at this point taking projects that excited you. You weren't going to take something that was a drag. We weren't going back to Blue Cross. No offense to anyone at Blue Cross, but
Lovely
right, like, yeah, you're taking stuff that you like, that you want to do.
Mostly. I mean, we all end up, it waxes and wanes, right? That's one of the real bitches of freelancing. It's like you're freaking out because you're too busy, or you're freaking out because you're not busy enough. And sometimes when you're not busy enough, you're like, all right, maybe I'll take that job, because it's, feast or famine. You never know when the next thing is coming. So sometimes you get way overwhelmed by if you're lucky to be able to take on too much work, then you got that problem of taking on too much work and you're kind of maybe not delivering as well, or you're run ragged doing it.
Yeah, totally. So for people who are listening, who are thinking, I mean, and just so people, can you just tell us about what actually, for anyone who's like, what is Duo? What happened to Duo? Can you actually just tell us what happened?
Yeah, so Duo Security, originally SIO Security, which I will also take the hit for that name. I'll take the trophy for the Duo name and the knock for the name. Duo Security is a 2-factor authentication product. So basically, people probably have this now in some form, but you log into a website with your username and password, and then something pops up on your phone saying, was that you trying to do it? And that's basically it. And at the time, that was not a compelling product space to get into. There was, one really big company that had a really, poor experience, a little key fob thing that created a code that you had to type in. And it was certainly not the sexy problem space that a lot of cybersecurity, information security companies try to get into, where they're chasing the newest exploits and the biggest problems. Like, This was more of a, and it kind of goes to that sort of Midwest humility. This was more of a rising tide kind of thing.
Yeah.
If we can take off the real easy hacks, like, somebody copied my password, but they can't get in without my phone too.
Right.
It covers, 80% of all the easiest, dumbest sort of drive-by hacking that there was. Yeah. And that became, and the user experience, again, you talked about timing. One of the great things about the timing of Duo was suddenly we all had computers in our pocket, and we could use those computers to create that sort of handshake rather than having something on our key fob. So we kind of jumped on that, and the whole sort of ethos of it. A lot of the security industry was very like foreboding and fear-based, and not if but when, like, you're gonna get hacked unless you use us. And none of us really felt that way about what we were doing. It's like, we can fix this through well-designed, user-centric security stuff. And that was like a breath of fresh air in the industry. I think it helped that, Ann Arbor did not have, if we had started in the Valley, we probably could have gotten a lot of people from the security industry with a lot of those preconceived notions of how to design
it should be
market and how it should be. We didn't have that. We had a bunch of people from other tech startups and stuff. And so none of that fear mongering really fit in with us. So we did something kind of different, and it worked really well.
What did you, and it worked so well that eventually Duo was acquired by Cisco.
We grew to about 800 people at acquisition from over the course of 8.5, 9 years. A few $100 million in ARR got bought, but it was Michigan's first startup unicorn. Second was StockX, I think. And it's still going strong. Like the brand affinity is super strong. The team was great. Like we just attracted some of the best people, partly through that sort of positive angle to all this stuff too.
That's amazing. And so, okay, so you're back. I don't want to say back to the drawing board, because I don't know that's exactly accurate, but you're back on your own again.
Yeah.
Exploring opportunities, working on projects. What have you learned? And this is what I hope our audience can really take away, is like, what have you learned that guides you today? What have you learned from these prior experiences that guides how you move forward, how you choose opportunities, how you find opportunities? Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I left Duo Cisco in May. Spent a bit of the summer sort of wandering in the woods, trying to figure out what I was going to do next. And I debated for a long time about joining another startup or another security company or freelancing. And what I realized is, like, I kind of want to do all those things, and I kind of don't want to do any of them. So freelancing or contract or just being sort of a free agent felt like the best thing. But the thing I couldn't do was go back to that feast or famine, way too busy to feel like I'm doing good work.
Yeah.
And we talked about this before, just the sort of competitive nature of, like, I feel like I need to get more work, so I'm going to undercut myself even on price or timelines or things like that. Ultimately leads to some pretty shit outcomes,
terrible outcomes. Yeah.
So leaving room for opportunities, I think, was a big thing I wanted to make sure of. Even if I'm leaving some money on the table somewhere, if I'm too busy for something cool that comes along, then what am I doing this for? So that's a tough thing to juggle, though, right? And but I think that's been the biggest thing, is not get so consumed by everything that's available or possible that I don't have the room for the things that really get me going.
Well, it makes sense, and one of the things I often tell clients is, the relationship with your business and the relationship with your clients, much like the relationship with your spouse or partner or children, is something that is going to be one of the most important relationships of your life. You're spending your days in your business with your clients. And if you hate every minute of it, or if you are drowning because you can't say no to things that are not high priorities for you, that you don't like to do, just because you just like want, like, you know, to feed sort of the freelance or consultant monster, you're going to be miserable. Like, and what's even the point? And so I love this sort of idea of giving yourself space to say yes to the right opportunities, rather than just like grabbing everything, because that's kind of what leads to misery. I think it's terrible.
It's kind of the old parable of the you know, the two barbers in town, and one of them's, you know, it's super messy, and or actually maybe it's the cobbler, so I don't know, but when you don't spend enough time sort of working on your own thing, then you're going to forever be doing the stuff that you had been doing, right? And so if you want to be doing something else, you need to start doing that as well. I remember when Tron 2 came out, and Daft Punk made the soundtrack for it.
Yes.
And it was amazing. It was like, of course,
yes, totally.
Make the soundtrack for it. And everyone's like, man, it's so cool. Like, how does Daft Punk get to do the Tron soundtrack? And it was like, because they've been making the soundtrack for Tron their entire career. Like, that's what they do. And then Tron 2 comes along, and they're like, well, Daft Punk's the only one that can do this.
They were born to make that soundtrack.
100%. Like, nobody else can do the Tron 2 soundtrack because
totally.
They've been making it for 30 years.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of thing where I, you know, towards the end of when I was freelancing the first time around, I was starting to get a little burnt out on doing a lot of the same thing, because I was not putting the time into developing my portfolio or working on the next sort of, you know, promotional thing to get me, you know, the clients I wanted. I was taking on the ones that came to me. Same with photography. I was a freelance and editorial photography, and I'm doing that again too. When you start getting known for a thing, that's the only thing you're ever going to do, unless you make a real conscious effort to be like, well, I'm this too. And that's going to have to be a conscious sort of effort to expand that. And so a lot of photographers get sort of stuck in a rut of everything they've done before, because they're not taking a week off to go work on the thing, edit the book or whatever that's going to show the next,
to expand to the next level
that they wish they had. Yeah,
exactly. You know, this reminds me of a story. So back when I started consulting and doing marketing consulting, I at the time was really burnt out on startups and tech startups. So I said, I don't want to work with tech startups right now. I want to work with the big guys.
that's fair.
So, you know, just kind of made that decision. And then I very shortly thereafter got Intel as one of my anchor clients. Nice. And so I was like, okay, cool. I got Intel, let's go. And a few weeks, but I still need, you know, like I need more stuff coming in. So I got referred actually to a company down in Mountain View. I lived in San Francisco, so I drive down to Mountain View, go meet these guys. They're basically working out of like an abandoned retail shop with this startup idea. We have a good conversation, but part of me is like, I don't want to do this. This isn't who I want to work with. I'm not excited by it. And there were a number of like red flags, and it just felt a little weird. And I stuck to it, Pete. I ended up telling them, listen, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to present and the time, but I don't think I'm the right fit for this. And I took myself out of the running, and I thought, Laura, what the hell have you just done? That was money that was on the table that I was just like, no, I don't want it. And what happened was about a month later, I got a really, really big contract working for GE. And it was my dream client. It's like, I said I wanted to work with big tech. I was working with big tech. And that led to so many opportunities. And it just reminded me, to your point, if you have a vision for what you want to do or where you want to go, and you're not there today, and today you're doing this different thing, it just takes, to Pete's point, like these baby steps of making movement towards it, little movement towards it, and being careful about what you're willing to compromise on, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, It's a great point. And Daft Punk and GE apparently have something in common. Like you got that GE work because you had demonstrated work that they wanted. They're not going to like discover you and pluck you out and say, hey, we think you could do this kind of thing for us. You have to, and sometimes you're not going to be able to do that work for a client first. You might have to do that work for yourself and kind of take that as like an investment in yourself. Like, I want to do more like this. So I guess I'm going to pay myself in time to work on that. And then I have something to demonstrate.
I love this. This is such an important point about nobody is waiting to pluck you out of anonymity.
No chance.
That doesn't exist. It doesn't happen. And I know we all wish it did happen.
Yeah. I mean, we all want to act like marketing isn't a thing, right? Like we all want to just say like, well, if I put my work out there, they'll find me. If we build it, they will come, kind of thing. And I spent a lot of time with the University of Michigan art and design school, and I'm cranking on this all the time. It's like, don't expect to be discovered. Like, you've got to start getting your work in front of the right people at the right time, and then do it again because that wasn't the right time. It's never the right time. So you need to exercise that muscle of not just the marketing sort of, starting a mailing list or something like that, but actually talking about your work and finding a way to connect what you do to what they need. They're not going to make that connection for you. So if you can't yourself in a way that's relevant to them, then you're just never going to make it.
Yeah, if you can't do it for yourself, nobody else is going to do it for you. You have to, like, I just want everyone to think there's nobody walking around. Is anyone listening to this walking around thinking, I wonder who I will pluck out of anonymity? I wonder who I will choose. Yeah. Is anyone thinking that way? No, nobody's thinking that way. We have to make it easy for people to make the decision to collaborate with us by showing them who we are, what we do, what we're about.
Yeah.
Pete, I love talking to you.
Likewise. The other thing that makes me sort of think, it was like on the photography side and the creative side, the artist side, there's always this sort of assumption that at some point you're going to find an agent or a gallerist that's going to be that person for you, right?
Gotcha.
And that may well be, but they're going to take half your cut. So there's also there needs to be a motivation beyond, well, somebody else will do the work for me, because you're paying them to do that too. And so it's tough. I mean, I wish there was more sort of MBA classes for artists and designers without being on into MBA, because we all try to pretend that this isn't a business, right? That it's that it's art, it's creativity, it's design and communications, it's all the squishier side of things. Yeah. But you're not going to be able to keep doing it if you don't find a way to make some money off it. And so one of the things I'm trying to like instill in every conversation now is like, don't be shy about connecting money to your creative output. Nobody else is shy about that. No engineer is shy about saying, hey, what I do is valuable and you need to pay me for it. No CPA or anything is going to say, I just do it for the love of the work. It's like, no, if you want to keep doing it, you got to get paid for it, pay the bills.
And it is possible, as Pete has experienced this, I have experienced, is absolutely possible to be paid really well to do the stuff that you're good at, that you enjoy doing. I think a lot of people, especially like, they'll think, well, I have to do this other thing so I can afford to do the thing I really like. And I always say, why don't you figure out a way to afford to do the thing you really like by charging for it, by, there's the hobbyist, that's one thing. And then there's the business. And if there is a way for people to think about, how do I marry the thing I enjoy doing that I'm actually really good at, that people need and are willing to pay for, you're on the path to building a business.
Yeah. And especially right now, I mean, there's never been a bigger demand for, for lack of a better term, content creators, right? Like every business is out there being like, how can we be relevant to an audience? Well, it's not going to be through, hawking your product every chance you get. It's going to be through connecting with people. And right now, creative people are more in demand than ever before. I was really lucky at Duo to build a creative team there. We ended up with like 35 designers, videographers, and animators and writers and stuff. And it was so cool. It was absolutely the sort of secret sauce of, I mean, I'm pretty biased, but it was definitely one of the big things that made Duo sort of land in the way it did in the marketplace and the audience, in recruiting as well, because it's not utilized enough by a lot of companies, that creative mindset, that ability to like put out interesting, compelling, relevant, even if it's product information in a cool way. Like, you don't have to be shilling stuff. You can do this in a less tacky way.
Yeah.
But designer in the room, I guarantee your stuff's going to be a lot better.
Oh my God, I love it. Okay, so I have to do a quick PSA for anyone who's watching, who's like, this sounds really cool. I want to learn more. I'm going to let people know. Pete, I haven't even told Pete about this. I don't know if he'll be there. I'm going to try and get him there. November 4th at 9 a.m. For those of you in Ann Arbor or the Ann Arbor area, I will be at Studio for their coffee and co-working event. You're all welcome to attend, and we can chat more. And always my roundtable, called the More Clients Roundtable, is the second Tuesday of every month, where we actually help creatives and consultants learn how to get more clients, and especially clients they like. Pete,
that was a classy insertion of something that, you know, she needed to get out. She's marketing in a clever and relevant way.
Thank you, Pete.
Yeah. I'll be there on the 4th. That sounds awesome.
You will? Okay, fabulous. All right, I want to wrap this up. Do you have any final thoughts for the audience?
No, I mean, this stuff is, I still go back, even right now, with whatever success you say I've had. When I left my job, I was freaking out. It was a cool job. I worked with great people. Everyone seemed to appreciate what I was doing, but it just felt like, you know, sort of like you were saying with Intel and GE, like it just felt like it was time for me. I didn't know what I was going to do next, but I knew it was just time for me to start working on some other things. But even then, I still freaked the hell out about it. And it was months of like, did I do the right thing? And I'm pretty well on in my career right now. Like, I could go get a job if I needed it, and I was still freaking out. So just, if there's one thing, if this is the kind of world that you want to work in, get used to that roller coaster. Like, find a way to use it in a useful way, like a motivating way, not something that's going to create despondency, because there will be times where you're just like, what the hell am I doing? I'm dried up on work. That's fine. That's the time to work on the stuff that'll get you in the next batch of things. And
I want to say also, for people who are pricing appropriately, and who understand kind of what Pete's been talking about, how to put yourself out there, how to get this stuff done. It is my personal viewpoint, and I say this primarily as a business coach, but also having been in business for a number of years. You should not be paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
That is not acceptable. And anyone who is still operating paycheck to paycheck, that's not a business. Okay, we need to get you to a point where you can afford in air quotes to take off 2 to 3 months if you choose to, or if there's not business coming in, or whatever the reason should be. Because if you're there's probably something wrong. I'm going to guess charging by the hour. I'm going to guess rates are too low. I'm going to guess not ideal clients. You haven't figured out your target market, stuff like that. But that should not ever be the case. I don't know if do you agree with me, Pete?
1,000%. That's a great point. And I mean, we watched that with companies move to SaaS models and subscription services, because it was really hard to get everyone to like buy the new version of the software every time. Look at how your products can be that kind of sort of passive revenue. It's still very active, work and stuff you got to do. But when you start to get recurring revenue from your activities, then you start to be able to forecast, and then you get to sleep at night. So yeah,
it's the best. Okay, everyone, Pete is tagged in this video if you want to connect with him and you want to learn more about him. And Pete, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation.
Thanks for having me. I love